97.7 The Game.
Two voices there. One of them knows what he's doing. Listen, this is what this show is going to do. It's going to give you what you want. You want anger after the 49er draft. Reaches.
Yeah.
Consensus.
All of it.
So we give you Greg Cosell. River Island's guest line, NFL Films. You want someone to let loose on John Lynch.
Oh, boy.
And let you know that man has done you wrong yet again.
I want to know where he had Stribling mocked his mock.
There's only one person who knows how to start a fire like that, and it's Greg Cosell. Hi, Greg. How you doing today?
Doing great. Well, you're not going to get from me, I think, what you're expecting.
Oh, man.
Come on, Greg. Let loose. The Niners, they just reached all weekend. Their armpits.
How do you know that?
Because
tell us the
because
consensus.
my laptop is absolutely steaming right now, Greg. That's why.
Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
Do you know what the 31 other teams draft board look like? Do you know what the 49ers draft board looks like?
No, Greg, I don't know that.
I know what.
That ends the conversation right there.
I know what
That's
11
the end of the
websites tell me, Greg. I know what all kinds of mock drafts tell me they should have done.
And you're really going to go by that when teams draft? You think teams draft based on what mock drafts say?
Yeah.
All right, Greg. Thanks for coming on.
All I'm going to do, guys, if you're going to ask me about the players they drafted, there's only one I don't think I watched, maybe two, but the others I watched. All I can do is tell you how I evaluated them. The rest of it, I don't really care.
Greg, I do hope that you were able to sense the sarcasm in our voices. I really do.
Okay.
Yeah, please. Let's do it. Let's do it. So you got a text from our producers because we were on the air when Stribling got picked by the Niners. Your quick response was loved his tape. I'd love to hear more. What do you think of De'Zhaun Stribling?
Well, I watched his 2025 tape, and the first thing that stood out, you're dealing with a guy that has an outstanding size-speed profile. He has vertical explosiveness. He's big. He's 6'2" and an eighth. He's 207. I loved what I saw in that regard. But what I didn't see on his 2025 tape was I didn't see him working between the numbers a lot. So I said to myself, you know what? He transferred from Oklahoma State. So I said to myself, I'm going to go back and look at all his pass targets from 2024 when he was at Oklahoma State. And you know what? He worked the middle of the field at Oklahoma State really effectively. So when I was all done watching probably, 100 and whatever the number of targets, maybe 200 plus, I came away really liking what I saw. I thought that he looked quick. He looked refined as a route runner. I think he can really develop into more than a vertical dimension. He's absolutely a vertical dimension because he can run by people. So I really, really like Stribling. And just so you know, and people listening, just so they know, I spoke to an offensive coach who's been in this league for 35 years who liked Stribling more than Mekhi Lemon. So all this consensus talk, that means absolutely nothing to anybody that has a brain.
Wow, I mean, that felt personal. Felt like I was under attack there. I thought I had a brain. I'm just kidding. Seriously, though, Greg, like when you look at the tape, are there areas where you think that he is falling short or areas that you look at and you think he needs to improve on that?
Well, there's always areas because no one comes into the league without any, as a finished product. No one comes into the league. These are young men, kids in many cases. Some are older, obviously, because we've gotten some are still left over from the COVID years. Some are, with NIL, they stay longer. Some transfer 2-3 times, which he actually did because he started at Washington State. You could say he's a little straight line linear in his movement. He's probably more tight hip than loose and fluid. No question. I would say he has to work on catching through contact. You didn't see that a lot on tape, just so you don't know if he can do that well or not, because sometimes in college you don't see that a lot. And as I said, when I was done with Ole Miss, there weren't many routes between the numbers, but they were in his Oklahoma State tape. So, of course, there's things that every player has to work on when they get to the league. But I think he's a very good prospect. Did I anticipate them taking a wide receiver? Absolutely not. We talked about that on Friday. I did not think they would take a wide receiver. If he turns out to be a really good player, and no one's going to say anything. At the end of the day, you're trying to acquire and get more and more good players. So we'll see what happens. No one knows the answer to this. I can only tell you that I liked his tape. And was I surprised? Of course. Everybody was surprised by the pick, not only because of who it was, but because they probably didn't think they were going to take a wide receiver. But based on my tape study, I think he's a strong prospect.
I think that's a fair statement. That's how I felt about it. Greg Cosell, NFL Films, talking out the 49ers draft. I mean, before we leave Stribling, would love to get your thoughts on just the 49ers wide receiver room now and how they normally deploy their receivers, because that's right. One of the first thoughts is, wait a minute, Pearsall and Evans, if they're healthy, how is there kind of a lot of room for Stribling?
Well, I got to tell you, I mean, first of all, based on history, you're dealing with Mike Evans, who's an older player who's been hurt the last couple of years. Unfortunately, Pearsall has too. So I'm sure in their mind, they probably felt like, hey, we have this guy rated highly. You never have enough wide receivers. They have Christian Kirk as well, who's also been hurt throughout his career. I think that it's never hurts to have more wide receivers, believe me. So their wide receiver room right now, assuming normal development from Stribling, and you don't know how that goes at all. He's going to be a rookie. You don't know. It looks like a pretty good wide receiver room when we sit here on April 27th. But you don't know. But it certainly has a lot of depth to it. There's a lot of different kinds of receivers.
And is he a guy who can play a number of different spots? Does he profile more as a classic boundary X, or is he somebody who can move to different spots?
Well, I think down the road, he certainly can do that. Whether he's, in an ideal world, Mike Evans is that guy if he's healthy. In an ideal world, Mike Evans is the boundary X, and I think we know that. But as I said, I think Stribling can be that guy for sure. I mean, he's 6'2" and 1/8, 207. He's a big young man now. He's not small. I mean, he ran a 4.36 40. He can run, and he easily ran by people at the college level, which automatically doesn't mean he'll run by people at the NFL level. But with his size, stride length, and vertical speed, he is a vertical dimension.
Greg, before we kind of go bop through all of these players, who are the two that you didn't watch?
Let me just see their draft class. I did not see Willis and Duggar.
Okay, Willis and Duggar. All right, so let's do Romello Height. What did you think of him there in the third round from Texas Tech?
Yeah, the only issue with Height is his weight, but he's very bendy. He's Gumby-ish. He's a good edge pass rusher. He's an older guy. I think he's 24 years old. So I don't know if his body's going to change, but he's a very good edge pass rusher. The big question is, because I think he was under 240 pounds at the combine. I think he weighed 234 at the Senior Bowl. That's what he weighed at the Senior Bowl, 234. So that's the only question with him. But there's no question that he's a loose, fluid athlete. He's got great natural quickness. He's got change of direction. He's got sudden burst off the edge. He's probably a situational pass rusher type. Again, we don't know exactly what this defense is going to look like. It's, obviously a new defensive coordinator who's done a lot of different things in his tenure in the league. So we don't know exactly what it's going to look like. But he's definitely a pass rush type player. He's got an explosive first step off the ball. He's got bend. He's got flexibility. He's got a relentless motor. He's a good prospect. It's just the weight. Can he truly be an edge pass rusher in the NFL at that weight? And that's the question you have to ask.
And what would be the weight that he would have to get to, in your opinion? Do you find a lot of edge guys under 250? Is that kind of where the bar is set?
I think if he gets over 240, you'd feel a lot better about it. He's not likely. I'm not a guy who works with, I don't know the answer to this, guys. My guess is if he was 234 at the Senior Bowl, he's probably not going to get to 250. But I don't know the answer to that.
Greg, 49er fans have PTSD about Kyle Shanahan taking running backs in the third round. It's like a whole thing. And so now Kaelon Black is the one who carries that into his future, which is maybe a little bit unfortunate. Maybe he can be the one who breaks the narrative. What do you think of him, especially in Kyle's system?
Loved Kaelon Black's tape. Loved it. He would have probably been, if I made lists, my third or fourth best back in this draft as far as the way he runs. I mean, he runs hard. He runs hard inside. He's north-south. There's no hesitation. There's no tentativeness. He's physical. He ran over Dylan Thieneman. I mean, he's a really good runner. He's a burst runner. He will accelerate. He sees the hole. He goes, and he's going to run into people. He's going to run over people. When I watched him, again, I didn't know the Niners were going to draft him, obviously. But when I watched him, I thought this guy is really good running, gap scheme where you see it and you hit it. He's really good running zone. I really like this back a lot. And now that I know where he is, he certainly fits Kyle Shanahan's offense.
Have you seen him out there in the pass game very much? And
no, he's not. He's not going to play in those situations at all. And they don't need him to play in those situations. They, if I'm not mistaken, don't they have a back that's a pretty good receiver?
Christian McCaffrey?
Yeah.
That guy, isn't he a pretty good receiver?
He is.
Yeah.
So Blacks wouldn't be playing in that situation regardless.
But don't they like to have that positional flexibility to where a guy's on the field and you don't necessarily know that it's going to be a run play?
Well, here's the only thing that I don't know that teams who worked him out would know, because he wasn't used as a receiver at Indiana. Yeah. That doesn't mean he can't catch. He just wasn't used that way. So teams that worked him out, brought him in, did the whole routine, which I don't do sitting in my office at NFL Films, it's very possible he's got good hands and he just wasn't used that way. That's something we don't know. But certainly if he becomes the number 2 back, and I think he's a better runner than Jordan James without any question. That's my view based on tape study. This year he certainly wouldn't play in that role.
Greg, let's take the defensive line of the Niners as a whole now. So Romello Height, we can add Grayson Holton, the tackle out of Oklahoma who went in the 4th round, Mykel Williams, Alfred Collins, C.J. West, Nick Bosa coming back, like all of the draft capital they've used on this. How do you sort of see that group? How do you see this line going into next season?
Well, there's still a couple of unknowns, but let's assume Bosa's back at full strength. Let's assume Williams is back at full strength with normal development. They're going to count on Collins and West to improve in their second year. I don't know if either one is a dominant pass rusher, but that's why they got Odigizua. Odigizua is an outstanding interior pass rusher. Grayson Holton is a quick twitch defensive tackle. That's his style. And whether he's good to play this year as a 4th round pick, we don't know, but that's who he is stylistically. He's like Odigizua in the sense that he's got, some twitch to him, some burst to him, some explosiveness to him. They still have, Keon White is still on the roster. He's not a great pass rusher, but he's the guy that can play on the edge and you can move him inside. So they've got a lot of bodies. So, we don't know how it's all going to shake out. They actually signed someone as a free agent whose tape I really liked, this kid from University of Tennessee named Bryson Eason, who I really liked his tape. I thought he was a draftable player. So, we'll see. But there's a lot of players here that, that this is what the offseason is for, to work through all that.
When you look at Mykel Williams on tape, do you think that he's more of an interior guy at his best or a guy who can thrive on the outside?
I think, again, he's a younger guy still, so there's development there. I think at this point, as we're talking today, as a pass rusher, he's better inside. He's a very good run defender on the outside. I'm sure the goal is to develop him further so he can be an edge pass rusher, and we'll see how that goes, because my guess is he's probably 21, 22 at most, and he's coming off an ACL, and he's only going into his second season.
Greg, did you do any work on Mikhail Kamara, the defensive lineman from Indiana?
I did not.
Okay. I just heard a lot of buzz about he's another undrafted free agent, and it felt a little buzzy for some people over the weekend.
Yeah, but I'll tell you who I did work on, and I got to tell you, I really, really liked him. And I never know where guys are going to get drafted, guys, just so you know. So I don't, to me, that's not a big deal because, the approach I take is I don't know what teams' draft boards look like. It doesn't matter to me what mock drafts say. They don't know what teams' draft boards look like. So in my world, I think mock drafts are totally irrelevant. So that's my world. So a guy that I really liked on tape and was Enrique Cruz, the tackle from Kansas. I watched a lot of him because I watched a lot of Jalen Daniels, the quarterback, and so I saw their offense a lot. And I think Cruz has the ability to become a starting right tackle in this league. Now, they don't need him to do that this year. And obviously, when you're a sixth-round pick? Was he a sixth-round pick, I believe?
He was a fifth-rounder.
Fifth-rounder.
Yep.
I think he has a chance to be a starter in this league down the road.
So, Greg, a lot of 49er fans, because, again, Shanahan does not or has not historically, there have been a couple exceptions, but usually doesn't use big-time draft capital on the offensive line, and a lot of people wanted them to address the line. I know you didn't do a lot of work on Carver Willis, who they got there in that fourth round, right? But, if a fan was like, did they address the offensive line? Would in your mind, would that be a yes?
Well, I mean, again, not having seen Willis, so I can't speak to the player, but, they drafting a tackle, he was a tackle at Washington. So I don't know if he's a tackle or a guard. I mean, I don't know. But that's a fourth-round pick 127. So that's address, you know that teams can get really good offensive linemen in later rounds. So that would be addressing it. And then in the fifth round, they pick Cruz. And Cruz, like I said, I studied him in detail, and I really, really like him. And I think he's only going to get better. So because they didn't take one in rounds 1 through 3, I guess people could say they didn't address it in the way fans might like. But I don't know how obviously they feel good about these players to some extent, or they wouldn't have drafted them.
Yeah, it makes sense. And the only guy that is on the board that we haven't talked about is the cornerback Ephesians Prysock out of Washington. Yeah. Talk to me about him.
Yeah, he is long. He started at Arizona, went to Washington, 6'3 3/8, 196, really long. Those long guys are very intriguing. Because that length is a trait at the corner position, as we know. And sometimes length can make up for the fact if you're not, a 4'4" guy. Now, amazingly enough, you were in a 4'5" at his height and weight, which is very, very good. And his vertical jump was 39 inches. So he'll be an outside corner, and again, I'm not saying he's going to start on the outside, but, I saw him play mirror match press, physical press, he can play zone, that size, that length, the long arms, I like the way he played press. I like the way he played press a lot. I mean, I thought that his off coverage was not as good. That was my sense of his tape. So that's where I think he needs work. He was a little upright, which is often the case with guys who are 6'3" when they play off. But, he's long. I mean, he's just really long, and that's a trait.
Niners post-draft with Greg Cosell, NFL Films, right here on Willard and Dibs, 95.7 The Game. Greg, this might be a tough one, but when you look now at who they added, and obviously, let's go back to when you said you were surprised, like many of us were at pick 33 when it was Stribling. So now,
I was surprised it was a wide receiver.
Sure. So, I wonder what your thought, knowing what we know now, where do you see at least maybe potential holes on the roster, if any?
Well, first of all, let's understand that it's April and there's guys that they're counting on normal development. So they're counting on development of Mikael Williams. They're counting on development of Collins and West, the rookie D tackles from a year ago. You're counting on normal development of players. When you draft guys high, obviously Williams 1, Collins 2, you're counting on development. So, we don't know how that's going to play out. You just don't know, but that's what they're counting on. So that's why that's a hard question to answer. We don't know what George Kittle's situation is going to be right now. We just don't know the answer to that. Ricky Pearsall, who is a player that I know they like and I really like, he needs to be healthy. Unfortunately, he hasn't been healthy enough where he's played on a regular basis. So there's still a lot of questions about specific players. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say they're all going to turn out great. We don't know the answer to that. But they're counting on guys that they drafted to become good players as they continue to develop. So, I would say that the left guard position is a position that has to be better than it was. Again, I don't know if they see Carver Willis as a guard and he'll compete at that spot. I don't know the answer to that. So, I think Pooney, who's going into his third year this year, has to play better than he did a year ago, but it would seem to me he'd be the starting right guard.
Real quick, Greg, how do you feel about the safety position? They had one undrafted free agent, and then they also signed Patrick McMorris yesterday. And then obviously they've got the guys they already had.
Yeah, I thought Mustafa and Brown, as the season progressed, played pretty well. So, I think that they'll be the safeties. And I don't think that they'll look. There's really no one right now who's going to replace them. And obviously, who knows what happens as we go forward. But I think that those guys played pretty well once they became entrenched as the starters. And I think they played pretty well. Mustafa is kind of a swagger player. He brings an attitude. I think Brown is a guy that has a lot of traits. And I think they're hoping. So let's say he was in the 23 draft. So what is this, his fourth year? Coming up?
I want to say this is his third year. I could be misremembering, though.
Yeah, it was the 23 draft. Yeah, the 23 draft.
Yeah, so this will be
year 4.
Yeah. It'll be his fourth year. So they because he's got all the traits you want in a safety, I think they're continuing to count on him becoming I don't want to say a true impact player, one of the best safeties in the game, but he's got those kinds of traits. So, again, I think they're continuing to hope that with further development that he moves in that direction. So like I said, on April 27th, there's questions, with a lot of things here. There's just like there'd be questions with a lot of teams at this point.
Greg, great stuff. All those opportunities to rip the Niners and you never did it.
Yeah.
Well, because you know what? I believe it or not, I actually think that, teams where they have scouts who do this 12 months out of the year, and this is what these people do as a profession and as a living, no more than guys who are accountants who go to the games. I don't know. Maybe I'm crazy about believing that. What do you think?
That's a crazy take. Yeah, that's ridiculous.
That's one you're going to want to take back.
Is that a crazy take?
It's a crazy take.
Yeah.
I know sports talk radio hosts who know a hell of a lot more than the likes of John Lynch. That's for sure.
That's what we were looking for.
Well, I tell you what, the waitress at my diner, I think, had the absolute best mock drafts I've seen.
Okay, send it to us. Yeah, send it to us.
Yeah.
Greg, thanks.
Thanks, Greg.
Always so much fun to talk to.
All right, guys, appreciate it. Thanks so much.
Okay, there it is. Greg Cosell, NFL Films. He knows things. We're sponsored by Safeway. 888-957-9570. It's not bad.
Thank you.
Those of you on hold, stay right there. And if you're not on hold, come on, let's talk this out.
Get on hold.
Well, it seems like a lot of you were pissed over the weekend. Let's work on it. Let's talk it out. We'd love to hear it. 888-957-9570. Willard and Dibs.